Okay, class. This week we're going to be doing floors, roofs, and ceilings, and they're all very similar. And you sketch them, sketch the boundary, make all your setting changes and such as that. So they're pretty similar as to how you create them. So start out with this file I gave you called Creating Floors, and open that. And you'll look at it. You'll see I've got two different wall types in here. Here on the back and the east side, I've got a CMU with brick, and on the other two walls, it's a stacked wall, brick over CMU, and then metal stud. And I got a footing underneath both of those. So let's go to level 1. And you remember last week I talked about the difference between architectural floors and structural floors. Well, now we're going to create architectural floors. And so level 1 is the lowest level I have. Before we start, let me go to the section. You'll see here that I extended the walls down 1 foot, the base constraint, and I put my footings at 1 foot below. That's certainly one method of doing it. The way we do it in the other classes is we have a level for our footing, and it makes it easier to keep things in the right, in the right place as far as constraints go. But for this exercise, we're just going to go with that 1 foot offset. So on the architecture tab, I come over here to the floor. If you hit the pull down on it, you see your choices. We're going architectural. And I want to start with this floor generic 12-inch. But I want to make a concrete floor. And so I'm going to go edit type and duplicate, and I'm going to call it concrete slab 12-inch. All right, it's an interior floor, so I'll leave that. These things are the same as what we've looked at in other videos, so we're not going to make any changes there. But I do want to change my structure and my material. I want concrete cast in place gray. Okay. All right, sign out. I got that, so I'll say okay. Okay. And now the options here are offset and extend into wall to core. And I'm gonna demonstrate yes and no on this, so you'll see what we're talking about. The default is pick walls, and so I'm fine with that. And so I'll come down here and pick one wall, and it's aligned to the interior side, so that's what I want. And I'll go around picking the others. And then you'll notice that on the metal stud walls, it went to the other side of the core. And that's very cool. That's what I want in this particular case, okay? But I have to trim the corners. Since we had two different wall types, they didn't meet up. So I trim the corners, and I'm going to check yes to finish it. And it says it overlaps the highlighted walls. Do I want to join the geometry and cut overlap walls? So I'm going to say yes. All right, so 3D view. There's the floor. Let's go to the section, and you can see here the floor actually cut into the interior gyp board up to the edge of the CMU, which is a normal way of doing things. But over here on the metal stud wall, it went all the way through, not quite to the CMU. It left a little bit of a gap because that's where the core boundary would be in that particular wall. So let's look at that wall. I can't do it. Ugh. Okay, can't do it that way. Since it's a stacked wall, I'd have to go into the other. But this is kind of a normal way of doing things, because you wouldn't have a metal stud wall sitting on a footing. Okay, because footings are below grade. All right, so that's the way that that works. Now let's edit that floor and turn off a couple of those. So if I click on the floor itself to select it and go edit boundary, now it tells me I have to be in a plan level view to edit the boundary of a floor. And so I created in level 1, so I'm going to go back to level 1. And let's see, I'm going to pick these two walls since we've already got a section there, and I'm going to turn off the extend into wall core. And now let's go back and look at it. So you can see here, the floor stops outside of the wall. Okay, it just butts up to the wall finish. Here, okay, so it didn't change. You can see the sketch line is still on the interior side of the wall. So if I flip it back, oh, it's not. Dealing with the stacked floors are a little different. Okay, so yeah. If it were not a stacked floor, it would have been to the inside of that jib board, just like it was over here. So let's go back and edit that to change it back to the way it was, with extending into the wall core. Okay, so that's good. That's the way that we want things. All right, so now let's go to level 2, and we're going to create another floor. Now level 2, let's go find detail. We haven't talked about underlays before, but when you're in a plan view, you have the choice of an underlay. And what that means is, if you notice in gray right here, the outside of that CMU on the stacked wall is kind of in a light gray color because that's the underlay. And it's almost like, you know, putting a tracing paper over something that you're going to trace. Okay, so you can see through it, but you can't edit it. You can't do anything with it. Sometimes it's good to have it on. Sometimes it's good not to have it on. So I'm going to turn it off so it doesn't confuse me in any way. All right, so now I want to create another floor. And let's look at some of the options here. I want to look at the steel bar joist, okay? And let's look at the type properties on it, because this is a composite floor, if you will think of it. It's got multiple layers. And the layers are, at the very top, you've got a vinyl floor covering for the finish, the concrete, the metal decking. This structure here is the actual bar joist. Okay, okay. Now, metal deck, okay, it's not show, it won't do it here. Do it in, I have to show you in another floor system. Anyway, so here's a typical, you know, composite floor. Let's look at the concrete slab on metal deck. And here we have an additional layer type of structural deck. And this only comes up with these structural decks, these metal deckings right here. You can choose your deck profile based on what's loaded in the project. And when it talks about bound layer above, the deck is included in this 5 inches of concrete here. If we make it standalone, it adds the deck below it, but you notice it doesn't fill it with concrete in the decking. So the only time you would use something like this is if you're doing a insulation foam on top of the decking for a roof, as opposed to a concrete. So we'll leave that there. That's just to demonstrate. We're not going to deal with that in any of the stuff that we're doing. But what I do want to do is create well, let's look at the wood joist here. And we'll look at the wood finish. Because most of the floors that we're going to be building in our houses have wood systems, whether it's a joist or a floor truss. Okay, and so you notice here that the plywood subfloor is part of the core because it's part of the structure, okay? And then you've got the joist right here, okay? And then the finished flooring is on top. One of the problems with including finished floor in a floor system is that what do you do if you have multiple finished floors within a house? Like you have hardwood in the common areas, carpet in the bedrooms, tile in the bathrooms, like that. So most, especially with residential type stuff, I do finished floors as a separate floor system. So I just do the structure itself as the floor, the joist and the subfloor. But we're going to leave this one like it is, okay? So that's the floor that we want to use, okay? Now, okay, so let's go ahead and put this one in. All right, with a CMU wall and a wood floor system, well, yeah, we'll go extend to core because we want it to go into the actual against the CMU. So we'll pick walls. All right, and let's trim these up. Yes, because we're going to cut out the drywall gypboard in there. And let's look at our section. And so you can see the core of the floor system. Let's put some color on it. Ew, I didn't like that because everything's gray. Let's go back to hidden line. The core of the floor system extends into the core of the CMU wall. The wood finish stops at the furring level, and then the drywall sits on top of the wood floor, which that's a proper construction detail. The other side here, it did everything correctly except for because of the stacked wall situation, it's extending things too far to the right. If I had a regular stud wall, it wouldn't do that. Okay, now in our projects for 1129, 1131, we're going to deal with floors in two different methods, the floor wall intersection. We're going to deal with them in two different methods. And honestly, this wall is what's causing the problems here. So let me undo to get rid of that floor. Yes. And let's change this wall out to a different wall type. That might have been what I should have used in the first place. Let's see how that looks. Yeah. Okay. So now let's go back and edit this one. And I want it to go to the outside of the core. Okay, that's better, although the sheathing should be up above. Now we'll go to level 2 and put that floor back in. The wood joist, here we go. Extend into core, pick walls. And let's do some trim. But this one I want to flip. We'll flip it to the outside core. And we'll save that. Yes, we want to cut out highlighted geometry. Let's go to our section. Okay. And so this is a much better way of how it should look. The joist actually cuts into the stud layer and the drywall sits above it. Now, one of the problems here with including finished floor in our floor family is that it puts the very top of the finished floor at the level. And your levels are going to be for the top of the subfloor. So what we would have to do is offset this up the thickness of the finished floor, which should be 3/4 of an inch. Yep. So we'll just come here and we'll go offset of 0.75 inches. And that's a much better looking detail of how it should look. All right. Looking at my notes here, I think all that looks good. Now, like I stated, we got a couple of projects you're going to do in this class with some different floors and ceilings. So you'll want to read those instructions carefully and follow them. And then also in the 1129 class, there's very specific ways that we're going to deal with floors. So you need to follow those videos there. This is just teach you how to use a floor tool. Okay, so next, that's the end of this one. We'll move on to the next topic in the next video.